Ancient Rome thrived on spectacle. Gladiators, wild beasts, and condemned criminals fought for survival, while crowds roared for blood. Dawn found the Colosseum breathing. The arches blazed softly. The underbelly shifted and hissed. In the tunnels, sweat, blood, wet straw. Slaves murmured as they dragged the knights' bodies to pits no eye would witness. Above, the sand lay newly combed, a neat veil over yesterday's crimson, pretending a shovel could erase cruelty. By noon, everyone knew the veil would be red again. Vendors rolled in with baskets of figs, watered wine, and skewers of roasted meat, their voices rising over the groans of chained prisoners waiting for death. The opening acts weren't the gladiators, not yet. They were the condemned, criminals, deserters, slaves. Rome called it punishment. In truth, it was a warm-up show for the masses, a rehearsal in obedience. Crowds streamed in, families with children, senators in white togas, merchants smelling of spice. They came for the same thing, cruelty disguised as spectacle. The empire had perfected it. From the very start, the games were engineered to be more than entertainment. Lessons, warnings, propaganda carved into flesh. Every scream from the arena reminded the living who held power. In part one, we watched gladiators turned into propaganda, beasts slaughtered as trophies of empire, and emperors drowning paranoia in blood. But we didn't see the machinery behind it. The hidden rituals, the silent workers, the private horrors whispered about but rarely written down. Rome's cruelty wasn't only on the surface. It ran deeper, into the sand, the shadows, the very bones of the empire. Today we go back, not for the stories already told, but for the secrets left behind. Dawn executions staged like theater, children trained to cheer at slaughter, trapdoors and stage machines turning death into illusion, slaves and prisoners paying for every burst of applause. This is part two of ancient Rome's most brutal and inhumane arena acts that went too far. The dawn that taught obedience. The Romans never wasted a spectacle. Every arena day was choreographed like a cruel theater, acts inside acts. They called the midday shows the meridiani, but the killing began before that, when the sun stretched over marble seats and the crowd still filed in with bread and watered wine. The ritual that set the tone for the entire day wasn't a duel. It was execution. Criminals, deserters, runaway slaves, prisoners of war hauled into the sand at dawn. Some died quickly, beheading before a half audience. Others were led into elaborate punishments. Crucifixions raised like grotesque decorations around the arena. Men in pitch-soaked shirts set ablaze as human torches. These deaths weren't about suspense or skill. They were about a sentence Rome wrote in plain sight. We decide who lives and who dies. Drummers kept rhythm as prisoners marched, chains clinking in time. Vendors hawked food over the sound of flesh struck and screams rising, then clipped short. Children sat beside their parents, watching men beg for mercy that would never come. To Roman eyes, this wasn't corruption, it was education. Sometimes the executions played like miniature dramas, a thief torn by dogs, an arsonist burned alive, a deserter forced to fight blindfolded until he collapsed. A grim parody of fairness, the punishment fits the crime. The audience didn't question it, they applauded. This was the whetstone, the sharpening of appetites before the feast of violence to come. Scheduling did the rest. Animal hunts at midday, gladiators toward evening. Save the stars for last. Keep the crowd restless, eager, hungry. By noon, the floor was already littered with bodies dragged away in haste, the sand raked red, and the people, far from sickened, were more excited. They tasted blood with breakfast. Now they wanted the show. What does a civilization teach its children when death is a lesson and applause is the answer? The Colosseum wasn't only an amphitheater, it was a classroom, and the pupils were not just hardened men and women, but children perched on their parents' laps. Their small eyes watched men scream, animals lunge, blood spray. Cruelty wasn't hidden behind walls, it was wrapped in ritual and framed as civic duty. Writers hint at whole families attending, like our festivals and holidays, except Rome's holiday began with corpses. Fathers narrated punishments as moral lessons. This thief burns because he broke the law. This slave is crucified because he disobeyed. This gladiator fell because he lacked skill or courage. Death in the arena became a storybook written in flesh, and children were expected to read it. Archaeology adds a chilling detail. In Pompeii, charred by Vesuvius, frozen in time, toys mimic gladiator gear, miniature helmets, wooden swords, little shields. Play wasn't innocent, it was practice. Elite families staged ludi puerorum, mock battles for boys, often with wooden weapons and not so imaginary injuries. Courage wasn't cultivated through kindness, Rome believed, but exposure to brutality. Mothers too played their part. Sources describe women pushing sons to watch, to stay seated, to hold back tears. Compassion was weakness. Stoicism was the lesson. By the time these boys became men, violence wasn't shocking. It was ordinary, a template for justice, honor, entertainment. Rome didn't simply rule its children with discipline, it trained them with blood. Beneath the marble tiers stretched a labyrinth. Tunnels, pulleys, elevators, wooden frameworks, the hypogeum. To spectators above, the arena looked alive. Beasts leapt from nowhere, forests grew in minutes, seas appeared in the city's heart. Behind the illusion stood technology, a machinery of death as sophisticated as it was ruthless. The shock came through trapdoors, dozens invisible beneath sand. A signal, a rope, a panel. Then lions starved for days erupted into sunlight, or hidden enemies rose under a gladiator's feet. To the crowd, magic. To the victims, terror choreographed, elevators, counterweights, teams of men, hoisted cages, platforms, even entire stage sets. Reconstructions show winches strong enough to lift a rhinoceros or a cluster of chained prisoners in one smooth ascent. Every creak became part of the theater. Every surprise proved Rome's mastery of spectacle. The arena shape-shifted. With canvas backdrops, props, and clever landscaping, the floor turned into desert, forest, battlefield. Pine trees hauled through tunnels slotted into sockets to make instant groves. Painted scenery suggested mountains, caves, distant seas. Sometimes water pumped from underground channels flooded the basin for mock naval skirmishes. Nature itself bent to Rome's will. For victims, these landscapes were traps. A prisoner expecting flat sand stumbled into a fabricated woodland where lions hid behind trunks. A gladiator met slick ground while his opponent advanced. The scenery wasn't decoration, it was weaponized environment. And for the crowd, that was the marvel. Not only men and beasts dying, but engineers proving that not even the elements resisted the empire's hand. The Colosseum turned technology into theater, a reminder that Rome ruled not just people, but the world's very texture. The arena's cruelty didn't end at Rome's walls, it spread outward, a contagion carried to the far provinces. Governors eager to display loyalty staged echoes of the Colosseum, local twists added by local landscapes. In Gaul's winters, criminals weren't thrown to beasts as often as to the elements, bound and hurled into icy rivers while crowds cheered from the banks. In Syria and Mesopotamia, prisoners were chained in open sun, winds driving sand like a slow knife across their skin, storms as spectacle. In Africa, executions fed to crocodiles along river edges. Elsewhere, hyenas and jackals finished the sentence by night. None of this was improvised. It was political theater. A governor who staged brutal games advertised two messages to Rome: wealth and loyalty. To local populations, the empire's power wasn't distant, it was here. Festivals, myths, gods, absorbed and replaced by Roman narratives reenacted through suffering. The Colosseum became a template copied across continents. The empire exported roads, law, language, and spectacle. And the lesson held from capital to frontier. Mercy is weakness. Cruelty is currency. The Colosseum's brightest illusion wasn't lions or floods, it was invisibility. An entire army of men and women whose names never made the record. They built the sets, fed the beasts, raked the blood, dragged away the dead. Slaves, condemned laborers, forgotten workers who toiled in darkness so Rome could cheer in the sun. In the hypogeum's maze, hundreds sweated in stifling air, hauling ropes, heaving counterweights, cranking winches. At a signal, they unleashed lions, raised forests, flooded floors. The audience gasped at miracles. No one applauded the hands that made them. The work killed. A misfired pulley could crush a man. A slipped rope could drop a cage, releasing beasts too soon. Ancient scrawl hints at tragedies, lions breaking free below, handlers mauled in tunnels. No chronicler recorded their names, but every show cost lives. For every gladiator who fell in sand, slaves perished unseen. Feeding the beasts added nightmare. Slaves dragged livestock or condemned people into cages and were maimed in the process. Pits beneath the Colosseum mix animal bones with human remains, quiet testimony to the laborers consumed by the monsters they readied. To the senators in the sun, the transitions looked seamless. To those below, the price was sweat and terror. Without slaves, there was no spectacle. They were the hidden gears in Rome's cruel machine, bleeding without applause. When the sun set and crowds poured out, the city seemed to exhale. Seats empty, baskets packed. Ordinary life resumed. Except, not always. Sometimes, when torches were lit and gates barred, the arena breathed again. Not public games, private shows. For emperors, senators, chosen guests. By day, Cruelty was theater for the masses. By night, it became something smaller and darker. Torchlight gave the arena a different character, flames trembling against stone, shadows thrown long across sand. Executions now met not the roar of 50,000, but the laughter of a few. Chains rattled in the hush. The condemned begged, as always. But here, mercy was even less likely. Rumors clung to certain names. Caligula, sadist, throwing prisoners to beasts in darkness, so screams echoed unseen. Domitian, obsessed with surprise, staging late hunts where visibility barely mattered. Terror was the point. Commodus, the showman, slaughtering beasts by torchlight, preferring the intimacy of select applause to a crowd he couldn't control. Music drifted. Flutes, lyres, reluctant singers. Wine loosened tongues. Schedules dissolved. Improvisation took over. Execution staged for amusement. Sexual humiliations forced on prisoners. Grotesque mock plays whispered about, rarely recorded. Chroniclers wrote public memory, not secrets burned by torchlight. So, what survived were fragments and hollows. And those hollows say enough. If daytime Rome displayed order and law, nighttime Rome rehearsed vice, drunk on its own power, even when no one was supposed to be watching. What happens to a civilization that treats human bodies as theater? The answer didn't die with the Colosseum's last roar. Centuries later, the stage changed, but the script remained. 1347. A Venetian slave trader named Marco Bellicore wrote in his ledger, "The new iron collars work perfectly. They cannot sleep, cannot eat properly, and after 3 days, they stop trying to run." It was just one entry, one glimpse into 3 torture devices designed not merely to restrain, but to break the human spirit. Devices so horrifying that even brutal medieval societies eventually banned them. By the end of this segment, you'll understand why some historians tried to bury this story for 600 years, and how one enslaved person turned the most brutal device into his escape tool. Between 800 and 1400 AD, medieval slavery wasn't incidental, it was an industry, from Venetian markets to Andalusian plantations. Unlike later colonial systems, medieval captors couldn't rely on distance or race to prevent escape. Many enslaved people looked like their captors and knew the land. So they developed something more insidious, psychological torture, devices engineered to attack what makes us human. Rest, nourishment, communication, device 1, the iron discipline collar. Imagine a 12-pound metal collar. The worst part isn't the weight, it's the spikes. 3 inches long, angled inward at the neck and downward at the chest. Try to lie down, pain. Try to eat, pain. Turn your head, pain. Bellicourt's 1347 ledger, rediscovered in 2019, shows it was his most requested item. Metallurgy on surviving samples reveals high-quality steel, custom, expensive. This wasn't random cruelty, it was profitable, industrialized dehumanization. Regional variations multiplied the effect. Venetian collars with longer spikes for high-value domestic slaves. North African models with bells to make stealth impossible. Ottoman versions with singular keys, dependence forged into the lock. Device 2, the modified scavenger's daughter. For those who tried to escape and were caught, Spanish colonial territories adapted the infamous compression device. The slave variant added 1. Adjustable leg irons tightened at sunrise and sunset, anticipatory terror as a schedule. 2. A face mask that silenced eating and speech while forcing eye contact with normal life. 3. The worst twist. Other enslaved people were made to operate the tightening screws. Torture weaponized as community trauma. Yet in 1463, a man named Yusuf ibn Muhammad turned the device into his escape. Spanish records call what followed impossible. 17 others vanished with him that night. The dismantled device reappeared as lockpicks and weapons. The response was swift, and revealing. Authorities realized bodies could be tortured, but communication still sparked rebellion, so they built a device to crush connection itself. Device 3, the branks of silence. Metal cages locked over the head and face, internal prongs punishing any tongue movement, holes just large enough to breathe, not speak. Variants punished reading, singing, even romance. Eye shutters fixed downward, the tabs punishing any vocalization, bars making intimacy impossible. Ottoman records tracked the effect. Within 2 weeks, most wearers displayed signs of complete mental collapse. Demand spread like a useful technology. Venetian traders imported, Spanish colonies customized. One monk wrote of a freedman who whispered for years, "Freedom felt like a trap." March 2023. Excavations beneath a luxury hotel in Lagos, Portugal, uncovered a perfectly preserved medieval torture chamber. Over 200 slave-specific devices in working condition. Carbon dating placed them 1650 to 1720, centuries after official bans. A leather ledger documented use on 3,000 people between 1670 and 1710. Similar caches have surfaced. Venice, Barcelona, London, suggesting a hidden infrastructure operating well into the Enlightenment. Medical records from the 18th century describe symptoms we now recognize as PTSD. Chronic insomnia, disordered eating, aversion to touch, echoing for generations. In 1721, northern Portugal saw a coordinated uprising. Over 400 enslaved people destroyed the torture inventory in a single night and killed 73 owners. The crackdown was brutal, 200 executions, but authorities never rebuilt the devices. The cost, economic and social, became too high. Rebellion succeeded through the one thing those devices targeted: communication. Even wearing branks, enslaved people created a language of bodies and positions that bypassed enforced silence. Today, major European museums house an estimated 12,000 of these devices in storage, cataloged, climate-controlled, rarely displayed. Because to show them is to admit that systematic technological dehumanization stayed closer, smarter, and later than our preferred stories allow. The Colosseum taught Rome to cheer its suffering. The provinces learned to customize cruelty. The hypogeum taught how to hide the workers who made it all happen. The private night shows confessed what a ruling class does when no one is supposed to be looking. Centuries later, the stage changed. The script didn't. Collars that punished sleep, devices that crushed bodies into silence. Masks that made love impossible. Technology learned Rome's lesson and sharpened it. Control the body, starve the spirit, break the bond. So here's the truth the sand and steel still whisper. A civilization becomes what it trains itself to applaud. If you normalize spectacle, you industrialize dehumanization. If you hide the machinery, you forget the hands that bled to make it run. And if you silence memories in storage rooms and basements, you don't erase the past. You prepare to repeat it. What else are we choosing not to see? What histories sit boxed and labeled under our museums, our institutions, our daily conveniences? If you want more of the past as it really operated, not how we prefer to remember it, subscribe. Thank you for wandering through history with me. May the echoes of the past keep you company, gently, until we meet again.